Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever stopped to think what truly keeps a society stable? Fair, making sure everyone's treated justly.
Mm.
It really boils down to a couple of crucial ideas, concepts that shape how governments actually function, sometimes in ways we don't always see.
Absolutely.
So today we're doing a deep dive into two of these cornerstones, the rule of law and the separation of powers.
Two really big ones.
Yeah, exactly. And our main source here is a pretty detailed document called Principles of Governance, Rule of Law, and Separation of Powers.
Right.
Our mission, really, is to pull out the most important bits, the key nuggets of knowledge from this source, give you a shortcut to getting informed about these, well, complex but totally vital concepts.
And hopefully find some surprising facts, maybe practical applications too.
Exactly.
And it's so important, like you said, because these aren't just abstract theories for lawyers or academics.
You're right. They affect everyday life.
They really do. They directly impact your rights as an individual. They're designed to prevent abuses of power, which can really derail things. And they lay the groundwork for, well, any functioning society, particularly a democracy.
So understanding them helps us see why things work, or maybe why they sometimes don't.
Precisely. It helps decode the system.
Okay, perfect framing. So let's jump right into that first cornerstone then, the rule of law. I think most people get the basic idea. Everyone follows the rules.
Mm-hmm.
But the real kicker, maybe the biggest challenge, is how it applies to the rule makers themselves.
Exactly. That's the core of it.
What does it mean for the people actually writing and enforcing the laws? The source puts it clearly. It's a constitutional principle. It makes sure that all individuals, institutions, and even the government itself are subject to and accountable under the law.
The law rules, not people's whims.
Precisely. The law rules, not individuals.
Mm.
Now, this concept, we often link it to Avi Dicey, Albert Van Dicey.
Yes, he really systematized it.
It sounds straightforward enough on the surface, but what are the core features? What makes this principle actually work, on the ground?
Right. Well, the source points to four really essential features. First up is certainty or legality of the law.
Okay, certainty. What does that mean?
It means laws have to be clear, easy to understand, made by elected officials, ideally, and shared publicly. Everyone needs to know what the rules are.
Makes sense.
And here's a really critical point. No one should be punished unless a court finds they broke an existing law.
So no making up laws after the fact to punish someone.
Exactly. No retrospective punishment. This ensures what's called the supremacy of the law. The law itself is supreme.
That clarity in banning retroactive punishment sounds like just a fundamental protection for everyone.
It absolutely is. Foundational. The second feature is equality before the law.
Right. Everyone's equal under the law.
That's the principle. The law applies equally to everyone. Doesn't matter about your status, your rank, how much money you have.
So the powerful and the ordinary person face the same justice.
That's the ideal, yes. And to make this real, the source highlights something important, providing free legal aid for people who need it during litigation.
Because justice shouldn't depend on how deep your pockets are.
Precisely. Justice shouldn't be just for those who can afford a lawyer.
So it's not just the letter of the law, but making sure it's applied fairly in practice.
Exactly. Third, there's the principle of liberty.
Liberty. Fundamental human rights.
Yep. People must be able to enjoy their fundamental human rights. Think freedom of speech, assembly, things like that. And the laws themselves must actively ensure and protect these rights, not chip away at them.
Okay.
And finally, number 4 is socioeconomic welfare.
That one sounds a bit different. How does that fit in?
It's an interesting connection. The idea is that good social and economic conditions should be provided for everyone for an improved standard of living. It's not just a nice to have, it's seen as supporting the rule of law.
How so?
Well, think about the Delhi Declaration of 1958. It argued that for the rule of law to truly mean something, people need basic dignity, access to education, healthcare, decent living conditions. Legal rights can feel pretty empty if you're struggling for basic survival.
Right. I can see that connection.
Yeah.
Basic needs have to be met for people to even engage with their legal rights effectively.
Exactly. It provides a foundation.
Okay, so those are the core features. But let's zoom out a bit. Why is upholding this rule of law thing so incredibly critical for any society? What are maybe the bigger impacts we don't always think about?
Yeah, the source gives a really good breakdown of why it's indispensable. It really acts like a societal firewall.
A firewall? How?
Well, first, it prevents dictatorship. It limits what officials can do, keeps them within legal boundaries. It stops power from concentrating too much in one place.
Okay, check on power.
Definitely. Which leads to the second point. It protects against arbitrary rule. It minimizes the chances of politicians just abusing their power based on personal whims or grudges.
Right. Decisions based on law, not mood.
Exactly. And maybe most importantly for individuals, it safeguards fundamental rights. It guarantees protection for your basic human rights and freedoms. That's the absolute bedrock of a just society.
It really sounds like the ideal defense against unchecked power, doesn't it?
It certainly aims to be. It also preserves the Constitution,
Mm.
keeps it working, operational, protects it from, say, coups or unconstitutional takeovers.
Keeps the rule book safe.
You could say that, yeah. It also improves the quality of life by pushing for those favorable socioeconomic conditions we mentioned.
Ah, linking back to that welfare point.
Yes. It fosters judicial independence, making sure judges can be impartial without fear or favor. It ensures legal certainty.
Certainty again. Why is that so important practically?
Well, imagine trying to run a business or even just plan your life if the laws could change unpredictably week to week. Certainty provides stability. People and businesses know where they stand.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. Predictability is key.
Definitely. And finally, it powerfully promotes accountability. Everyone, including those in power, is held responsible for their actions.
Nobody is above the law.
That's the principle. And this encourages fair governance where decisions are based on established laws, not, who you know or personal bias.
Okay, so it's foundational in so many ways. But if we're thinking bigger picture, what needs to actually be in place for this principle to work, not just on paper, but in reality?
Good question. Because having the principle written down isn't enough, right?
Right.
The source lists several vital conditions. One is, unsurprisingly, the robust protection of fundamental human rights. Things like equality, liberty, due process, they need to be actively safeguarded, not just mentioned.
Actively protected, not just theoretical.
Exactly. Another is absolutely ironclad judicial independence. The courts have to be impartial, totally free from outside influence, whether it's political or corporate or anything else.
Yeah, and I bet a free press is crucial here too.
Oh, absolutely essential. Freedom of the press gets highlighted. An independent media. No censorship that ensures transparency. It holds power accountable. It lets information flow freely. It's a powerful check.
The public watchdog role.
Precisely. We also need acceptance of diverse views. You need open dialogue, inclusivity. You can't have a functioning rule of law if dissent is crushed.
Makes sense. And the socioeconomic side again.
Yep. The provision of socioeconomic services. Access to essentials like education, healthcare, basic infrastructure. It supports that dignity aspect we talked about.
So it's really about the whole environment, isn't it? Not just the legal statutes.
It really is. It also requires an informed and engaged citizenry. People need to know their rights and responsibilities. They need to be empowered to participate, not just be passive subjects.
Active citizens, not just spectators.
Exactly. Then you need the establishment of democratic institutions. Institutions that genuinely uphold checks and balances, transparency, accountability, not just ones that exist in name only.
Real checks, not just rubber stamps.
Right. And finally, the source mentions the use of prerogative writs. These sound technical, but they're powerful tools for citizens.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, like habeas corpus, the right to challenge unlawful detention literally means produce the body in court. Or mandamus, which can force a public official to do a duty they're legally required to do.
Ah, so these are ways individuals can directly challenge the state if their rights are violated.
Exactly. They're direct legal levers for the individual against potential government overreach. They give power back to the citizen.
Okay, but let's be realistic.
Yeah.
In the real world, nothing's perfect. Ideals meet, harsh realities. What are the common obstacles? What factors can limit or even undermine the rule of law?
Yeah, unfortunately, the list is quite long. There are many things that can erode it, sometimes subtly, sometimes very overtly. One big one, often overlooked, is delegated legislation.
Delegated legislation, what's that?
It's basically laws or regulations made by government departments or unelected bodies, not directly by the main legislature, like Parliament or Congress.
Okay, why is that a problem? Seems efficient sometimes.
It can be efficient, yes. But the danger is that these laws often bypass the detailed public scrutiny and debate that laws made by elected representatives get. It can be a sort of creeping erosion of accountability.
Ah, less oversight. I see. What else?
High illiteracy rates are a major barrier. If people can't read or understand their rights or the laws, how can they seek justice? It leaves them incredibly vulnerable.
So education is actually key to upholding the rule of law.
Absolutely fundamental. Then you have situations like a state of emergency.
Right, where normal rules get suspended.
Exactly. Constitutional procedures, fundamental rights, they can be put on hold. Now, sometimes it might be necessary for security, but it creates this real tension with liberty. And it's a power that can be easily abused if not watched very carefully.
A dangerous tool.
Potentially, yes. Also, the very system of government matters hugely. Totalitarian regimes, military juntas, strict one-party states. These systems often inherently clash with the rule of law because power is so centralized and dissent isn't tolerated. Human rights abuses are common.
Okay, what about something like diplomatic immunity? That always seems like a direct contradiction to equality before the law.
It's a fascinating point, isn't it? A real paradox. And yes, diplomatic immunity does create exceptions. Certain individuals are effectively placed above the local laws. It definitely hinders the full application of equal accountability.
So it's a necessary compromise for international relations, but it does chip away at the principle.
That's a good way to put it. Then there are national security concerns. These can lead to practices like detention without trial or increased surveillance, which can seriously infringe on rights. Again, striking that difficult balance.
Security versus liberty again.
Always a tension. Political interference in the judiciary is another huge problem. If judges aren't independent, if politicians can influence rulings, then impartial justice goes out the window.
Undermines the whole system.
Completely.
Yeah.
And of course, corruption. Whether it's in government, the police, the courts, corruption allows unfairness, misuse of power, bribery. It just rots the foundations of the rule of law from within, erodes public trust.
Those sound like really major systemic cracks.
They absolutely are. And finally, the source lists two more. Lack of access to legal resources. If you can't afford a lawyer or don't know how to navigate the system, your rights might exist on paper but be impossible to actually claim. Makes justice a privilege.
Not a really.
Sadly, yes, in practice sometimes. And lastly, inconsistent application of laws. If similar cases get treated differently based on who's involved or, random factors, it destroys equality and predictability. It leads directly to injustice.
Okay, so that's a sobering look at the challenges. Now, if the rule of law is about everyone being under the law, what about the structure of the government itself? How is power divided within it? This brings us to the second big idea, separation of powers.
The three branches.
Exactly. Most of us know the picture, executive, legislative, judicial. But the real genius, and maybe the inherent tension too, is making sure they're not just separate on paper, but truly independent.
In personnel, powers, functions.
Right. Independent people doing independent jobs with independent authority. And the reason, it's simple but powerful. Stop any one branch getting too much power. Prevent abuse. Protect our rights.
Stops tyranny, basically.
Exactly. Now, this theory, it was really popularized by Baron de Montesquieu, right?
Yes, he's the key thinker associated with it.
And the source notes it's often seen as best practiced or most clearly practiced in a presidential system, like the U.S.
That's often the classic example given, yes.
So how does this separation of powers actually support the rule of law we just talked about? What are the big advantages?
Well, it's fascinating how they link up. The source lays out several key advantages. First, and maybe most obviously, it's about protection of individual rights and freedoms.
How so, specifically?
By preventing any single branch from becoming dominant. If the legislature passes a law that violates rights, the judiciary can strike it down. If the executive overreaches, the legislature or judiciary can push back. It creates multiple safeguards.
Okay, so it's another layer of defense for citizens' rights.
Precisely. It also establishes those crucial checks and balances. No branch gets a free ride.
Can you give an example of a check?
Sure. The legislature makes laws, right? But the executive, the president, can often veto those laws.
Right.
But then the legislature might be able to override that veto with a large enough majority. And then the judiciary can review the final law to see if it's constitutional. See the dance.
Yeah, it's like a constant negotiation or potential conflict built into the system.
Exactly. A constructive tension, ideally. This whole process directly upholds the rule of law, particularly by ensuring the judiciary is independent enough to interpret and apply the law fairly.
Right, the independent referee.
Kind of. Each branch also maintains accountability. The legislature answers to the voters, the executive often answers to the legislature and judiciary, and the judiciary answers to the Constitution. It spreads responsibility.
Prevents one person or group holding all the cards and all the blame.
Well put. This distribution of power also fosters political stability. Less risk of everything collapsing if one part fails or becomes too powerful.
Spreads the risk.
In a way, yes. And finally, it can enhance efficiency and orderliness. By giving each branch specific jobs, like lawmaking, law enforcing, law interpreting, it prevents overload and allows for specialization.
Focuses their efforts.
Right. Though, as we'll see, efficiency isn't always the main outcome.
Ah, foreshadowing. Okay, but this isn't just theory, right? Governments worldwide try to implement this. It must look different in different places. What stands out to you in the examples? Maybe comparing the U.S., that classic presidential system, with somewhere like the U.K., a parliamentary one.
Yeah, the contrast is really instructive. In the United States, the Constitution sets it up very explicitly. 3 distinct branches. Congress makes laws, the president executes them, the Supreme Court interprets them. And those checks we mentioned, veto, judicial review, impeachment, they're written right in. It's a very clear, formal separation.
A textbook example.
Pretty much. Now, contrast that with the United Kingdom. It's a parliamentary system. Fundamentally, there's more of a fusion of powers, especially between the executive and legislative branches.
Fusion. How does that work?
Well, the prime minister and the cabinet are typically members of parliament. They are drawn from the legislature and are directly accountable to it. They aren't separately elected like a U.S. president.
So they're intertwined from the start.
Exactly. Yet, even with this fusion, they maintain distinct roles. Parliament is supreme in lawmaking. The executive governs day-to-day, but relies on Parliament's confidence. And crucially, the judiciary remains fiercely independent, upholding the rule of law separately.
So even without that strict separation, the idea of distinct roles and checks still exists, just structured differently.
Absolutely. It shows the principal's goal, preventing absolute power, can be pursued through different constitutional designs. Look at France. It has a semi-presidential system, again with clear constitutional separation and a council to check laws. Or Nigeria and Ghana, both drawing on separation principles in their constitutions with powerful Supreme Courts.
So lots of variations on the theme.
Definitely. South Africa, too, post-apartheid constitution enshrines separation with a strong constitutional court. And Germany, its basic law sets up separation, and its federal constitutional court is very active in reviewing laws.
So the principle is widespread, even if the exact mechanics differ.
Precisely. It's adapted to different histories and contexts.
Okay, since the source mentioned presidential systems as where it's best practiced, maybe let's dig into how it typically works there in a bit more detail.
Sure. So in a typical presidential system, you have the executive branch led by the president. They're usually both head of state and head of government.
Wearing 2 hats.
Right. They implement the laws passed by the legislature, command the armed forces, handle foreign policy, but crucially, their powers are checked.
By the other branches.
Yes. Then you have the legislative branch, often 2 houses, like a Senate and a House of Representatives. Their main job is making laws, controlling the budget, the power of the purse, and overseeing what the executive does.
And they have that impeachment power, too.
Exactly. A very significant check on the president. And third, the judicial branch. Their role is interpreting the laws, applying them to specific cases, resolving disputes.
Yeah, and they have that big power, judicial review.
Yes, judicial review. The power to declare laws or executive actions unconstitutional. It's a massive power, ensuring everything aligns with the fundamental law of the land. And judges are usually appointed or elected in ways meant to ensure their independence from political pressure.
Okay, so that's the ideal setup. But you hinted earlier, what does this mean for actually getting things done? Are there downsides, challenges to this strict separation?
Oh, there certainly can be. The source points out several common problems. A big one is gridlock and political stalemate.
Oh, when nothing gets done because the branches are fighting.
Exactly. Especially if the president is from one party and the legislature is controlled by another, disagreements can just halt everything. Important legislation stalls, budgets don't pass, sometimes you even get government shutdowns.
So the checks and balances become checks and blockages.
That can happen, yes. This is often fueled by intense partisan politics. Compromise becomes a dirty word, and it's all about obstructing the other side.
So this system designed for balance can ironically lead to paralysis.
It's a real risk. Another potential issue is the weakness of the judiciary. Despite aiming for independence, courts can sometimes be undermined by political interference in appointments, or simply lack the resources to function effectively as a check.
So they might not be able to play their role properly.
Potentially. You also get issues with overlapping powers. Things like the veto and the veto override their checks, yes, but they can also lead to constant friction and inefficiency, just cycles of conflict.
Right. And what about accountability? Does separation always ensure it?
Not always perfectly. Sometimes there's a perceived lack of accountability, especially for the executive. Things like executive privilege or presidential immunity can sometimes make it hard to investigate or hold the president truly accountable for potential misconduct.
That feels like a serious loophole if we're trying to prevent power abuse.
It's definitely a point of tension and debate. The separation can also make it really hard to implement necessary reforms. If different branches have conflicting interests or priorities, vital changes can get stuck in the gears for years.
So progress can be very slow.
Painfully slow sometimes. It can also create real complexity in governance. For the average citizen, figuring out who's responsible for what, how decisions get made, who to hold accountable, it can be pretty confusing.
Yeah, it's not always clear where the buck stops.
Exactly. And finally, there's the potential for inconsistent policy implementation. If different branches or even different courts interpret laws differently, you can get uneven application across the country or over time. Leads to confusion and potential injustice.
Okay, so lots of potential pitfalls in the presidential model, despite its clear theoretical strengths. Now, this raises that contrast again. How does it look different in a parliamentary system? You mentioned fusion earlier.
Right. So in a parliamentary or cabinet system, the defining feature is that fusion of powers between the executive and legislative branches.
Meaning the prime minister and cabinet come from parliament.
Exactly. They're usually members of parliament themselves, and they lead the government because they command the support of the majority in the legislature. They aren't elected separately.
That is a huge difference from a president who might face a hostile Congress.
Massive difference. It leads directly to executive accountability to the legislature. The government stays in power only as long as it has the confidence of the parliamentary majority.
They can be kicked out by parliament?
Yes, through a vote of no confidence. If the government loses such a vote on a major issue, it usually has to resign or call a general election. It's a very direct form of accountability.
Okay.
There's also the principle of collective responsibility. All cabinet ministers must publicly support government decisions, even if they disagreed privately in cabinet meetings. They present a united front.
One voice for the government.
Supposedly, yes, it ensures cohesion. And the role of the head of state is often different too. In many parliamentary systems like the UK or Canada, there's a monarch, or in republics like Germany or India, a president whose role is largely ceremonial.
A figurehead, not the day-to-day governor.
Precisely. The prime minister runs the government. Also, legislative supremacy is often a key feature. Parliament is generally considered the supreme lawmaking body. While the executive proposes most laws, Parliament has the final say.
Okay. But what about the courts? Are they fused too?
No, and this is critical. Judicial independence remains paramount, even in a parliamentary system. The courts stand separate from both the executive and the legislature, tasked with interpreting the law and ensuring government actions comply with the Constitution or legal principles. They still uphold the rule of law impartially.
So even with fusion elsewhere, the judiciary stays separate as a check.
Absolutely. It's essential for maintaining the balance, even if the balance looks different.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've covered the rule of law, the bedrock idea that everyone, government included, is under the law, and the separation of powers deliberately splitting government authority to stop power becoming too concentrated and dangerous.
Exactly. And what's clear is that these aren't just static, theoretical ideas you find in old books. They're dynamic, living systems. They get tested constantly, they get adapted, they face challenges in the real world every day.
Right.
But fundamentally, they form the essential framework for trying to achieve stable, fair government that protects people's rights. Whether it's a stricter presidential separation or a more fused parliamentary system, the core goals are preventing tyranny and ensuring justice.
It's the constant struggle to make those ideals work in practice.
It really is, and no system has perfected it.
Which leads to a final thought for you, the listener. Considering that no system is perfect and these principles are always being tested, maybe stretched, sometimes undermined, what single factor do you think is the most crucial for a nation to actually achieve justice and maintain fundamental rights? Is it an independent judiciary, a free press, an engaged citizenry, something else entirely? What's the non-negotiable element, regardless of the governmental framework? Something to think about.